This is one of the best days of my career, I have to say, because I am driving a 1980 316. Someone at BMW Classic was crazy enough to loan me this car for half a day, and I'm going to make the most of it. And what I want to find out is this. Let's say you were just happily driving your 3 Series back in 1980 or even 1975 when 3 Series was born, and someone kind of kidnapped you or teleported you to 2025 and put you in a modern 3 Series. Like, would you be able to tell that you were suddenly driving what is now the 3 Series, or would you think like, whoa, is this a 7 Series? Well, that's one of the things I want to find out today. This is the M340i. It's the fastest non-full M version of today's G20 3 Series that you can buy. And this was the first 3 Series you could buy, the E21, the great-great-great-great-grandfather of this car. This one was built in 1980, but it actually goes back 50 years, and it's actually in some ways the father of BMW as we know it. So we're gonna fondle both cars today, take them for a drive. Stick around, let's find out how much has changed in 50 years. But first, a little context. BMW wasn't always the premium car powerhouse we know and love today. In the 1950s, it was actually struggling with slow sales and losing money year after year. Aside from the low-margin Isetta microcar and the fancy but slow-selling Baroque Angels like the 501, BMW had almost nothing to offer. Things got so bad that shareholders even considered selling the company to Mercedes. Then came the Neue Klasse, the new class, in 1962. It filled the gaping hole in BMW's product lineup and gave the brand a clear plan: build sporty executive sedans. The Neue Klasse 1500 gave BMW the money to keep going, but it's the 3 Series that gave the brand its mojo. What I mean by that is, the 3 Series was the sporty, agile, fun-to-drive machine that really helped BMW to shape its destiny. And this car really enabled people to understand just what BMW was destined for. Now, competitors have come along, of course, but none of them has managed to outsell the 3 Series, ever. So I'm going to leave aside the G20 for a second and let's check out this grand old dame. And you of course recognize this as the BMW as soon as you see it. Even if I cover up the badge, you can see the shark nose and the double kidney grille. But check it out, only 2 headlights in the front of the car. What's up with that? Well, the E21 actually started production with only 4-cylinder engines, and the 6s came along in 1977, 2 years later, and those cars have 4 lights in front. So moving along to the side of the car, let me show you something really smooth. Notice there's no shut line on the bonnet, and that's because this is a bit of a clamshell, so it opens and closes, and this is the shut line over here, this line running down the side of the car. Okay, follow me along to the side here, and something that really jumps out, if I jump out of the way, is this Hofmeister kink. Now that's named after Wilhelm Hofmeister, quite a young designer at the time, and he gave some of the BMWs, like the first Neue Klasse, the 1500, this element as well as the shark nose. And I think the management must have really liked it because they have decided basically that you can still see this element in BMWs today. Even if you look at the G20 3 Series, it's there if you look for it. Also, what you can see from the side is that this car has 2 doors. It only ever came in this shape. There were no 4 doors, there were no wagons, and there were no convertibles. Well, there was a Bauer convertible. I don't know if you can consider that a factory car because it was kind of coach built, but whatever it is, if you see a genuine E21, it's only going to have 2 doors. So moving along to the back now, I really have to say I love how this line kind of wraps around to meet the top of the taillights here. It's just such a beautifully resolved piece of design, isn't it? And everyone talks about Wilhelm Hofmeister, or they invoke Hofmeister all the time, but let's give this car's designer his due. I believe this was designed by the Frenchman Paul Braque, who came over from Mercedes and really gave us, in my opinion, some of the most beautiful BMWs ever. There was first 5 Series, the E12, and then the Sharknose 6 Series, the E24, that was also by Paul Braque. So just lovely design all around. What I really wanted to show you though was this badge over here. Now this is from an era where there was just relentless logic from BMW's naming department. So this tells you it's a 3 Series with a 1.6 litre engine. There were some later models with an I at the end, and that of course told you that those cars had fuel injection. This car is carbureted and hence it has no I. I think top dog for the E21 series is the 323i that had something like 143 horsepower. Be still my heart. I don't know how they could stand the strain back then. Of course, nowadays some BMWs no longer have an I. You don't really have to distinguish between a carbureted car and a fuel injected car anymore. Every engine has fuel injection. So I guess things have come full circle. Okay, here inside, I bet you can't see what's over here, right? And that's because these are angled towards the driver. This was actually the first BMW to start doing that to make it more driver focused, and it's something that continues to this very day. But you know what, when I sit in the E21, what jumps out at me is, oh, simplicity. I mean, there is a whole lot of nothing. Let's have a look. Like these controls, for example, are very logical. So you've got the air vents for the aircon, and they are grouped together with the aircon controls. This is the facelift model, so you have rotary, I guess, settings, which continued for, I guess, more than a decade. Before that, you had these sliders, which would look a bit more retro. Down here, you've just got the whole entertainment system, a simple radio. I don't know what these buttons do, but they say LMMUUU. I'm sure it works out in German. And of course, here we've got an ashtray with a lighter. Yeah, some cars still have ashtrays, but you know, there's actually 2 more ashtrays in the back over there because, well, smoking was cool in the 70s. Something interesting as well, on the top of this dashboard, we somehow have another row of air vents, and I guess that's because everyone was smoking all the time. You probably needed a good supply of fresh air. Favorite bit of the car though is what's in front of me. Just look at these instruments here. They're just so nice and clear. They really wanted to make these cars, I think, focused on the driver. And surprisingly, this car has no rev counter. There's an analog clock. And I'm guessing that the rev counter was optional, and that would probably relegate the clock to somewhere over here. So that's a pity. I would have liked to see how many revs I was doing. But the next thing is there's a really slender steering wheel here. It's got a nice thin rim, and that gives this car a very delicate feel. Some of the BMW steering wheels today are really quite chunky and quite thick. I wish they would go back a little bit to this sort of slender design. Oh, but this steering wheel, it doesn't move up and down or in and out. So, you know, even though I feel quite at home in this car, I'm guessing it wasn't a huge priority back then to be able to adjust this position. Or if you didn't like what you got with this car, well, too bad, buy some other car. Okay, look, I have to do this, even though I don't want to, but let's take a look at the second row of seats over here. This is kind of a hatchback arrangement. I tip this forward. It doesn't slide, but you know what? That actually wasn't very hard to do. And once I'm back here, okay, this is homologated for 3 people because there's 3 seat belts, but I don't really feel like I'm in a very cramped place. Let me just pull this back here. And you know what? I'm good for headroom. It's got good visibility. I mentioned ashtrays, of course. And it doesn't really feel like a claustrophobic place, which is amazing because this really isn't a very large car. I feel like I've got kind of room to sit back, relax, and just enjoy the ride. Okay, let's give it some beans. Okay, lots of sound. And okay, a little bit of action. This car, 1.6 liters, carbureted, 90 horsepower, so really not expecting much. Even the top dog, the 323i, 0 to 100 in that car was probably just under 9 seconds or so. And I'm guessing in this car is well north of a 10-second mark. But you know what? Even though I'm not going fast, I am having fun. I am just kind of having a nice time, and even though I'm only driving 80, I kind of feel as excited as if I were going 180. Oh man, and you know what? As I'm driving along, reaching 100 now that it's legal to do so, I'm kind of hearing more and more of this engine. You hear that? And you know, this car has a 4-speed gearbox, and that's probably why. I really feel like I could use a 5th speed now, and the later versions did come with a 5-speed transmission. And it's only when you get up to speed, I guess, when you start to feel like, okay, maybe there is a little bit more engine noise than I want. But what an engine, right? This is the M10 4-cylinder. It has its roots in the Neue Klasse, so it really goes back, and it was a super important engine for BMW. And I think that it does rev quite nicely, actually. It's very revvy, and as you see, I shift down for the lights here. Yeah, it picks up revs very nicely. and it is relatively smooth. Whether you like the voice or not is always a matter of subjectivity, but what's interesting about the M10 to me is that it actually has a little bit of Formula One relevance. It was, I think, the basis for BMW's F1 engine in the 80s, and those were turbocharged 1.5 liters, I believe, more than 1,000 horsepower. And what they used to do was scour the junkyards for old engines to put them in Formula One car. The reason for that is, well, the engine blocks are cast iron, and when iron is heated and cooled repeatedly, well, it gets stronger. So the older the engines, the stronger they would be. And so you've got all these junkyard engines that made their way into some of the most powerful Formula One cars ever. So this car has a little bit of that Formula One magic. Okay, well, so it is raining, and that's going to be my excuse for not pushing it too hard today. Honestly though, I would love to try this car on a track or some kind of closed circuit just to sample the handling, but of course that's not going to happen. Now this car, I believe, has semi-trailing arm rear suspension, and apparently if you went into a corner a little bit too hot and you lifted off the accelerator suddenly, your tail would want to overtake the front, so you'd have to do all this counter steering and all that kind of stuff. None of that's going to happen today, of course. But what I am curious about is how this car handles compared to the 6-cylinder cars. I mean, the 4-cylinder ones are, of course, lighter in front. And, you know, one of the things that BMW likes to talk about is how well balanced its cars are. So, of course, the lighter the nose in relation to the rear, I think the more balanced you can make your car. But you know what? Whether or not the 4-cylinder ones handle better than the 6-cylinder ones, when you have a car that's like just over 1 ton and this small, I think it's going to feel agile no matter what. I tell you what though, one of the things I was surprised about when I got on board was there's no power steering, and I was like, oh man, this car is going to be a beast to drive. But no, apparently you don't need it. That's what the guy from BMW Classic told me, and it's turned out to be true because, well, okay, I'm not a strong guy, but as long as you're sort of moving along, the steering gets lighter and it's really, really quite manageable. So it's only when you're at a standstill, maybe parking or something like that, that you might feel it. But when you're on the move, the steering actually is quite nice, and I actually feel very well connected to the road underneath me. My favorite control of this car though has to be the gear shift. I know I wish for a 5th gear, but the gear shift action itself is actually quite nice. Okay, so the throws are pretty long, but you know, this action of throwing the lever back into place actually feels pretty sweet. It just feels like very precise, and it snicks back into place. Just the way you would never expect a 45-year-old car to feel. I don't know whether it's because this is a factory car with only 7,900 kilometers on the clock, or whether they were just like that. But yeah, this gearbox is made by Getrag, and I would say that it could give a modern gearbox a run for its money. And the same applies to the clutch. The clutch action is actually very light, and it's very easy to feel the biting point. So even though I've only been driving this car for maybe half an hour, I'm really feeling very at home revving down the gearbox. Thank you. So let's talk about some of the pluses that I've noticed about this car. One of the things is the visibility is just stupendous. I can see really well out of the car and all my surroundings. I really like the fact that it's narrow, of course, because German city roads can be very tight. But yeah, I'm reasonably confident that I can see everything around me. There is a missing side mirror over here. Not missing, but it just never came with one. And all I have to do is look over my shoulder, and actually I've got a great view of what's around the car. Of course, the reason for that is, I guess you've got these slender A pillars and B pillars, and they're slender because, well, they're not as strong as the modern cars. The crash standards have moved on quite a lot. But hey, I think one of the ways to stay safe in the car is to not crash in the first place, and one of the ways to not crash is to make sure you can see everything around you. Another plus, I'm going to say the ride quality. Okay, I haven't gone over a seriously bad road in this car, but the suspension has been actually not just quite smooth, but actually very quiet. It doesn't clunk over bumps, and it doesn't sort of make a thunking noise or anything like that. It just seems to work really well. Maybe it's because I've got these sort of 13-inch wheels and pretty high profile tires, but this is not an uncomfortable car to drive. I guess it's kind of strange for people to see like a Chinese guy driving around in a classic BMW right in the middle of Munich. You know, I didn't think that this car saw much racing action in its day. And of course, in the BMW Classics, they do have a racing version of the E21. Apparently, it was their junior team where they used that car to train racing drivers. Didn't always end well. But this car itself didn't have a very illustrious racing career. The car that followed, the E30 3 Series, of course, was probably the most successful touring car ever. And I think because of that, this car has probably been overshadowed a little bit by the E30. But you know what? Maybe now that this is the 50th birthday for the 3 Series, this is the 50th anniversary, people are going to start to remember this car and remember that this is where it all began. Oh man, okay, fast forward 50 years and this thing kind of feels like a rocket ship here. I mean, carrying so much speed into corners and it just shrugging it off. I mean, this car, whoa, listen to that. The acceleration is just next level Champion League stuff. And you know, okay, this car is wider than a 7 Series. What I mean is it's wider than the first generation 7 Series. So the E21 felt so nice and compact, and compared to that, this car is super wide, especially when you're on some of the narrower streets here in Munich. But you know, it is a sizable car, but I would say it's still agile. I mean, it still holds bends really well. It's still the kind of car that you would love to chuck into corners. And yeah, even though it is a big car, I would defy anyone to say that a 3 Series isn't agile. It really is. But you know, I think this is really the kind of car where you gotta be going pretty fast in order to have fun. I mean, we've got such big advances in tires and suspension over 50 years, and that's really the big difference. And it is also sort of a quiet and stable car, so you don't really feel the speed. I mean, yes, you do want to throw it into corners, but you know, just the other day, I was on the Autobahn doing, okay, more than 200, and I actually had no idea how fast I was going. I was looking down at the speedo going, okay, we're moving along at 210. And you know, that's just how refined this car is at speed. So yes, you do want to throw it into corners, but on the flip side, it's also capable of being a very refined and very deceptively fast, just mile muncher on the motorway. That's probably the defining experience for this 3 Series, the engine. I mean, it's the legendary B58, right? So 6 cylinders, smooth, torquey, instant response, turbocharged, and you know, there's almost just endless thrust. And just listen to this. Whoa! Okay, this is a speed limit area, so there you go. I mean, just a couple of seconds and you gotta back off, and that's what this car is like. I'm also looking for remnants of the early E21 3 Series, and you know, I really can't say that I'm seeing any. I mean, I have this curved dashboard over here. It is angled slightly towards me so I can reach the furthest corner of the screen without leaning out of my seat. So fair enough. But everything else, well, you know, the simplicity of the E21 meant that I could jump into that car. I never sat in one before, and I could work out where everything was pretty much straight away. But in this car, I mean, you know, if you've never driven one before, everything's digital now. So how do you adjust the radio stations? Well, it's going to be somewhere inside a menu. There are just a few buttons here. The aircon controls are all digital now. So I would say that is really something that's moved on quite a lot. And I was hoping to see that underneath this all, it still feels like the first 3 Series. But honestly, if you took someone from 1980 or 1975 when the E21 first came out, and you kind of transported him into the seat of this car 50 years later and asked him to guess what he was driving, I think there's just no way. There's just no way he would correctly guess this is a 3 Series. Not a chance. Okay, well, it's a nice summer day here in Bavaria, and after a bit of driving, I'm not gonna BS you. This G20 is clearly the superior car. I mean, it goes better, it stops better, it goes round corners better, it's quieter, it's more comfortable, it's connected, and you can do more with it because you've got so much more space inside and a pretty large boot. So it is the better car all around, and yet, just driving this thing has put a smile on my face, and I think that even just looking at it is going to make anyone smile. We've gotten the thumbs up from other motorists. So I think that this is pretty much close to state of the art, and if you have a family to drive around every day, this is more than going to serve your needs. But if you have one of these in the garage, then I think it's going to make your life a little bit more cheerful. I'll tell you what though, whenever I drove this and felt a little bit of a smile on my face, well, I like to think that now I know where it came from. Okay, there is one more thing. While I'm in a traffic jam, I don't have a gear lever, and that's because I of course have an 8-speed automatic. 8 speeds. And you know, of course I do miss the engagement of just rolling through a gearbox. I even miss maybe just the challenge of balancing the clutch and everything nicely and getting my gear shifts as smooth as possible. But you know, on days like this when I'm stuck in traffic and there's a red line on the map, I do appreciate a good automatic. And you know, let's face up to two things. Number one, modern day automatics are actually way more efficient than manual gearboxes. I mean, I had a 4-speed in the E21. Number two, we all love manual gearboxes, or we say we do as car enthusiasts, but honestly, if the world did love manual gearboxes, then they would still be a thing. They would still be very, very common on new cars, and then nobody would buy autos, or at least, you know, fewer people would buy them. But the fact of the matter is, I think automatics are here to stay just because the mob has spoken. Oh, I have a prototype BMW behind me. I wonder what that is. But let's go out onto the main road here. Try not to get T-boned by a modern car, because you definitely don't want that to happen. So let's just blip down for this red light over here. But yeah, I love doing that just for its own sake. Of course I fluffed it there, but let's do that again.